Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf nun tes and baba kama. As we learn for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asim Basar B'Shivya. Yesterday's Gemara was discussing the Mishnah that said that if an animal fell in by mistake into somebody's garden and he demolished some of the fruits there, let's call it, some of the fruits, either he fell on top of them or he ate them. If it was an accident, the animal fell in there, you only pay what the hana that the owner of the animal had, meaning he didn't have to serve him lunch. He didn't have to pay for the expensive strawberries, let's say, that he ruined. He only has to pay what it cost, what he would have fed him, like animal fodder. However, if the animal went in to the yard, to the garden, the owner of the animal let him in there or allowed him to go in there, and it was the fault of the owner, he has to pay full damages. What are full damages? If you're in a field, big field, and you eat a bunch of strawberries, if you buy the strawberries retail, like they sell them over here, expensive, pay a lot. If it's a whole field, a whole garden of strawberries, and you ate a few, well, what's the difference, right? So that's what the Gemara said. That was yesterday's Gemara that discussed that you figure out what it would be worth 60 times. In other words, if let's say he ate, let's say, a kilo of strawberries. You figure out what would 60 times that cost, and you figure it proportionally. You don't look at strawberries at the retail level, how much these strawberries would cost. You look at it, if a person bought a whole field of strawberries, let's say 60 times much more, discuss different amounts, but we came out that 60 times is what you figure it. So that was a discussion yesterday. That's when he did the damage. Now, the Gemara here goes on. Gemara discussed different cases at the end of yesterday's daf. Well, let's say what he destroyed, what the animal destroyed, or if a person destroyed, but let's say he sent his animal in there and destroyed it. And when he destroyed it, they weren't really fully grown. They were just starting to bud or ripen. They weren't really ripe yet. So Rabbi Yossi Aglili had an opinion at the end of yesterday's daf that you figure out based on what would be like in the future. What would it be like when they were fully grown? You know, there's two ways to look at it. I damaged your strawberries. They were just beginning to come out. Yes, but if you would allow them to go out, that would have had full strawberries. You should pay the full amount. That's what Yosef Glili says. Others say, no, just look at it the way it was at that point. So now we're at the Gemara now, Omar, about 10 lines down on the page, on Nun Testament Aleph. This is where we left. This is where yesterday's daf led us off at. Omar Abaya, Rabbi Yosef Glili, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yosef Glili, and Rabbi Shmuel said the same concept, that you look at what it would have been worth when they were fully grown, when they were ripe at harvest time. Where do we see this? Rabbi Yosef Haram, and the opinion we just quoted a minute ago. Rabbi Shmuel, the Tanya, Meitav Shnei Meitav Kad Misham, we had this Gemara, the first parak. When a person does damage to somebody else, he has to pay from the best of his field, from the best of his vineyard. So they shall nizik, Meitav Kad Misham nizik. Rabbi Shmuel says you look at the best of the nizik. In other words, the one that was damaged, you did damage to him. You pay according to the best value of land that he has. Now, we're going to discuss that in a minute. Rabbi Kiva says no. Rabbi Kiva basically says you go according to the best of the mazik. Whatever the mazik's best is, you pay from that. Obviously, we're not talking about paying more or less in dollar value. Let's say the damage was $100, you got to pay $100 of value, but you pay from the best. Rabbi Kiva says, that you have to cut for damages or hegdish, you give from the very best. The Gemara in the first parak discussed that. But Rabbi Kiva was talking about from the mazik's best. Rabbi Shmuel says the nizik's best. Now, what do you mean the nizik's best? The Gemara says over there, what do you mean? If I damaged his worst stuff, I got to pay his best? Below Taima, the Gemara says, what's the case over here? What do you mean I pay his best? I pay whatever I damage. What do I mean I pay his best? He has all kinds, he has good, he has better, average, and worse properties. If I damage his worst, I should pay for the best. Why? Why should I pay according to his best value? Low Taima, where it's talking about, Rabbi Barab says it's speaking about where he ate one row, let's say, of fruits or vegetables among many. You don't know if he ate a weak one or a fat one, meaning if he ate a lousy one or really a good quality one. The Amar, that we're telling him, Kum Shlem Mishmeina B'meitav, the Gahashta, pay him by according to the best that he has now. Why should he pay the best he has now? We don't say that. We don't say Rabbi Barab. My time was Mechavel Varaya. I did damage to you. You don't know. We don't know. You have all kinds of property. We're not sure if that was a good row or a bad row. So because we're not sure, you can demand that I have to pay for the best row. Why? If you want my money, you want me to pay the best. Again, we're not talking about dollar value. Dollar value is whatever it was, right? Whatever they assess them at. But the question is, do I have to pay according to your best fruits or not? But if you want me to pay, you better prove it. That's what he means to say. That's what the Gemara is here saying. Rav Shmuel says, according to the best that would have grown later on, half the solik, the way it would have been at the time of the harvest. That's what he means to say. That's how he's interpreting it now. So Rabbi Yosef Glili, who says you pay not according to its where it's now it's in its budding stage or first coming out. The same thing over there. You don't pay necessarily according to the worst or according to the best. You pay according to the way it would have been when it fully grew. You destroyed it when it was half grown or a quarter grown. You got to pay the way it would have been if I would have let it grow to fruition, right? To the way it would have been completed at harvest time. So that's the idea that Rabbi Yosef Glili and Rishma both say the same idea, that you pay not according to the way it is now, but according to the way it would have been. You destroyed it in midstream. Why should you pay only the way it costs in midstream? Had you not destroyed it, it would have grown in another month or a few weeks. It would have been fully grown and I would have had a full fruit. You're paying him with land. But the question in land, you're paying with land. But the question is, what? Right. So that's the question. If you're paying him with land and you say you have to pay him according to the best, right? The person said you pay my best, so you got to pay. So the question is, why should I pay the best? My best. We're looking at the Nizik's land. So if we don't know, Ravina Barabin says, well, we're not sure if I destroy which row. Was it a good row or average row or a better row? Or was it a bad row, or an average row, or a good row, a real good row? So if we're not sure, why should I pay you the best? In other words, I got to pay according to your best. If I have property like that, if I have good quality property, actually, why should I pay according to best? Maybe I destroyed an average one, or a medium, or a below average one. That's where Via Robinson says, no, we're not saying that. That's not what he means at all. It doesn't mean you pay. It means that you pay if you know what row that is. But when you destroyed it, it was only half grown or a quarter grown. And the point that's how we're interpreting it now. That this interpretation, just like the rest of says, you pay what its future value would have been. What? Right. So we're saying. So that's what we're saying. Or are you just paying good property, bad property, good bad? How do you know what you damage? If that's the case, you don't know what you damage. I should pay according to the best. Why? You prove that I destroy your best, and that's not the case. Now he's saying it's not the case. That's not like Rabbi Barabin said, but rather we're talking about where you pay when you destroyed it, it was only half grown, but you pay according to what it would have been worth later on. That's what he means. You have the solik the way you pay you pay the way it would have been better later on. If you have the solik the way it would have grown. So here we really do mean according to the value changes. Don't pay. Because when I destroyed your row, and we know what that row was only worth $50 because it was half grown. If I would sell it now in the market, I'd only get $50. But if I would have waited another week or two, it was fully grown, I would have $100. That's what means I would have paid the $100. So here, according to this interpretation, there's a difference of how much you're actually paying. Are you paying $50 worth? Or are you paying $100 worth? We're not talking about the karka itself, according to this interpretation. So this is what Abaye said. Abaye said, Yosef Glili says you pay according to the future value. The same thing goes like with the same idea that Rabbi Shmuel says you pay according to his future value. That's his interpretation of Rabbi Shmuel. No, it's ba'olam. It's here now. It's just not fully grown. No, but it's not full. No, but it's here. It's ba'olam. It's just not fully grown yet. It's ba'olam. It's not fully grown. If you don't have land, you pay money in a chanami. Even according to the interpretation that you pay in land, it's only if you have land. If you don't have land, you pay in money. Money is always the best. Money is always the best. You pay in value, the value of the money, you have that. But if he can demand the karka. He can demand karka if the nizik can demand karka. But if you don't have that, you pay in money. Amar Mar, or some say it's also an issue. Some say that money is always the best. You could always, with the money, you could buy karka. Amar Mar, so we said before at the top of the page, Rav Shimon Yudah said, name Rav Shimon, when did we say that we figure it out. In other words, when your damage is done, you don't just say, okay, you ate a kilo, your animal destroyed a kilo of strawberries, give me a kilo of strawberries. No, you pay according to what 60 times that would be worth with the ground, etc. What you pay according to that, you figure out what 60 times of that would have been worth. And therefore, the amount that the mazik pays is not the retail value, let's say, of a kilo of strawberries, but what would a whole field of strawberries, 60 times what he destroyed, be worth? And then figure out what it's worth less the strawberries that he ate up. So that difference is much smaller than paying full retail value. So that's only if you ate sprouts or shoots, sprouts of vines or shoots of figs, meaning not fully grown. They were just in the shoot stage, like in the green stage when they're just shoots. They're not really, you don't see fruits yet. Smadar, but if it started to bud, that's a smadar means a fruit that's starting to that just came out, just appeared. You consider it as if they're ready, fully grown, as if they are grapes ready to harvest. In other words, it's the same idea that you look at you destroyed my grapes. Oh, but when I destroyed them, they weren't fully grown. Yeah, but wait a week, they would have been fully grown. So that's the loss that you caused. So that's what it sounds like. If it starts, smadar means when it first starts growing, then you pay the full value of grapes as if they're fully grown. Ema seifa. Seifa says achal pagim o bosar. Let's say you ate figs or unripe grapes. Who the ronos skilled up? And if you ate those, and he says if you ate those already, then you consider them as if it's fully grown. But that's a much later stage. Smadar is when it first starts budding. You just see the fruit at the very beginning. Pagam abosar is when it's already like half grown. So it's mashma only if it's half grown. From the same side, only if it's half grown, then you consider it as if they're fully grown and you have to pay the full value. But if it just started to grow, then you look at it. How much was the field worth before? And how much is it worth now? Less because you ate that smadar, meaning the difference is much smaller. Ravinus says, no, it's not a stira. Kroch batani, wrap it all up together. Meaning, when do you say you figure it according to the value of the field? And it's what your loss is. You didn't really eat up. You don't look at the retail value of the shoots that you ate. You look at how much is, if this was 60 times that, how much would it be worth less because you ate this part? Smadar, pagan, obos are all three of them. But if they started sprouting, the fruit started coming out, whether it's smadar at the beginning, the first blossom of the fruit, or pagan or bosa, or they're half grown, then then you consider it as if they're fully grown. If that's the case, if Rav Shimon Yehuda, if Rav Yehuda is saying this in the name of Rav Shimon, that he's saying that what? That if it's even smadar, even if it's the fruit started to grow, you consider it as if it's fully grown, and you pay the whole value of a fully grown fruit, like Rav Shimon said in the Mishnah. Rav Shimon said in the Mishnah, this business about you pay kama sehezika, right? It tells us masha zika. Showing based on both, so you figure out what a field would be worth, etc. You figure out this value, the damage to a whole field. How much would that be? That's only a small fraction of what the fruits would be worth at the market if the fruits that he actually destroyed. Rav Shimon said Rav Shimon said at the end of the mission, we'll see we pass like Rav Shimon, that if you ate completed fruits, then you pay the full value of the fruits, like the retail value. So Rav Shimon ben Yehuda says over here, this business that you only pay, that you do an estimation of a whole field and deduct only what that little portion of the field that he destroyed would be worth. So the amount that the master would have to pay is much less. That's only if the fruit haven't sprouted yet. But if the fruit sprouted, even at the beginning of sprouting, then you pay the full value of the fruits as if they were fully grown. So if that's the case, that's the same as your Bishua. Bishua at the top of this page, the first line of this page said, Ronos by Smadar. The first words of this page. Ochlas Smadar, if the animal ate them when they were just beginning to sprout, Rabbi Shua says, Ronos Akila and it's as if they're fully grown grapes ready to harvest. So then Rabbi Shimon Yehuda is the same thing as Rabbi Shua. The difference would be, you're right, they appear to say the same thing. Because Rabbi Shimon Yehuda and Rabbi Shua both say that if the fruit started coming out at all, even smadar, even at the very beginning, you pay the full value of the fruit. So what's the difference between them? When you leave a fruit too long on the vine or on the tree, starts to lose its value, right? Starts to drip and, gets infected, gets spoiled. So he says that's the difference between them. They both agree that if an animal your animal ate somebody's smadar, just beginning grapes, you have to pay the full value of the grapes or the figs or whatever it was, or the dates, as if they were fully grown. So what would be the difference? And the difference is probably only, do you take into consideration if they were too long on the tree or whatever was on the bush? Do you take that into consideration? Rashi says, in other words, you say if you ate them when they started to grow, you consider it the price. You consider them as if they're fully grown at the harvest. Yes, but if you actually left them on the harvest, if you left them all the way till harvest time, they actually diminish a little bit. There's this time when they're full value, and then when you leave them on until harvest, they go down a little bit. Do you take that into consideration? One, either Rav Shimon Yehuda or Rav Yeshua takes that into consideration and deducts a little bit, and the other one doesn't. Below Masami, but we don't know who says what. He just saying, since Rav Yeshua and Rav Shimon Yehuda seem to say the same thing, what's the difference between them? The differences must be, do you take into consideration the depreciation for leaving them leaving them on the tree until full harvest time, in which case they lose a little bit of that, but we're not sure which one. Do you consider the depreciation of later on or not? Now this gets us into a different topic. Abai Amar, Simon. No, I could tell which one. I could tell between Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. Both of them say that if you consumed the fruits at the budding stage, you must pay the full value. But so what's the difference between them? One must be, do you take into consideration the slight depreciation that the fruits take if you left them on the tree till harvest time? One takes that into consideration, one doesn't. We're not sure who. Abai says, I know who says what. So Mantana the Chayesh Lekushka, who's the one who's considered about, you take into consideration the depreciation of later on? It's Rav Shimon ben Yehuda. He's the one who says you can deduct for later depreciation, because he takes this example from a far out case. Where do we see this? Rav Shimon Yehuda, the time Rav Shimon Yehuda says, listen to this. Ones, you won't like this, right? Ones and Misham Zatzar. When a person rapes a girl, rapes a psula, what does he have to pay? 50 shekels knas. But besides that, he also has to pay. He's done damage to when a person damages a person. We've learned that we're going to have it again and again. Nezek Sari, Bushevas, and Boshes. You got to pay for the devaluation. She's worth less on the market. Before her father could have gotten the best boy from Lakewood. Now he's going to get an average boy from some other yeshiva, right? That's worth money, right? And that's Nezek, or she's worth less on the market. Tsar, pain, that she suffered pain when she was raped, right? Nezek Tsar, Ripui, doctor's bills, she had to go to the hospital. Shebes, she was out of work. Boshes, she was shamed. All that has to be paid. Says Rav Shimon Yehuda, Shimon Nasa, only said she doesn't have to pay for the Tsar. What's the Tsar? That he heard her, she was a virgin. Why? You don't have to pay that. Eventually, when she would get married, she would lose her virginity there, and then she'd also have that pain. So you don't have to pay for that pain. Listen, another opinion. We'll see. Another opinion, because right, we'll see the other opinion. But he says that you don't have to pay for pain. What do you mean for the pain of losing her virginity? She would have lost her virginity later on anyway. So the point of it is, well, I know it's hard to accept this idea. Okay, we'll explain it in a second. Amulo, look at the next line. Amulo. So they said to Shimon ben Yehuda, "Ein adom nebelas braslin nebelas balnis." What are you talking about? How do you compare somebody, the pain of being raped, to the pain of the wedding night when she did it baratzon? You can't compare that pain to that pain. There might be some discomfort, but it's not the pain of being raped. So he says you can't compare. But that's what Shimon Nasya. That's what they answered him, right? They said, don't compare one pain to another pain. The pain of being raped is much worse than the pain of losing your virginity baratzon. However, the point though is that Shimon Yehuda says you take into consideration the later loss. In other words, the pain of, presumably the pain of being raped is the pain of the tsar. I'm not talking about any physical violence that was done to her before, right? Let's say we were just looking at the pain of losing her virginity. He says, well, you take that into consideration. She's going to lose her virginity later on anyway, so he's going to have to pay for that. So that same idea, you don't have to take you take into consideration the loss, that the depreciation of the fruits on the tree, so to speak. And if you look at that later depreciation or not, we'll see other cases in a minute. obviously the rape doesn't sound too good to us, right? Because there's more pain involved in being raped than simply losing your virginity. But that was a discussion. That's another point. He has to marry her also, but so why do you pay her now? But if you're right. You're right. So, but the point is that the money that we're talking here about a naura, so it goes to her father anyway. I'm not talking about a girl who's over 12 and a half. So the father owns the money anyway, so he has to marry her. But the nezek sari b'shem saboshes would presumably go to her father because she's not an adult yet. Any case, that's a good point. Yeah, he has to marry her if it was an ones. If it was mafata, he only has to marry her. He either marries her or pays the 50. But in the case of rape, he pays the 50 anyway, and he has to marry her. But the 50 goes to the father. In any case, that was the discussion here. So although it doesn't feel right, we obviously would go Amulo Anadoma. How can you compare, Nivelis Bras and Nivelis Bonus? Sure, there's going to be pain eventually losing her virginity when she gets married, but it's not the same as the pain of being raped. I'm not talking about the emotional pain. That's already, that's already the boshes and etc. But the physical pain that you can estimate, is that the same or not? Shimon Yehuda says, oh, that there is pain there. Maybe there's a slight difference, but you can deduct for that. Amar Abaya, Hani Tanoi, these Tanoim, Rav Shimon Yehuda says this idea that you take into consideration later depreciation holds like the following Tanoim. They say the same idea. Shimon Yehuda had Amar. In other words, many times you see the Gemara had it already here twice on this page, right? That this rabbi and this rabbi say the same idea. You share the same concept and apply it in different cases. So apply it in one case. Before we were talking about those cases of damages. Here we're talking about this idea that Shimon Yehuda says about the case of the rape, and Shimon ben Yehuda and Hanitana. Where did that other Tanam say that? Ma'idetanya Rav Yossi Omer. In a different case of obviously we're talking about damages to people over here as opposed to damages to the field. In a case where the pasuk says that the two men are fighting and one man's hand went and knocked the other guy's pregnant wife and she lost the baby, he has to pay the Mayfloodus. We've discussed that a few blocks back. He has to pay the husband, right? She gets paid, the wife gets paid for the pain. Whatever she suffered. The husband gets the money for the plot. He owns the baby. It's his wife, he owns the baby. So Rabbi Yossi says, Nechi Chaya, when he pays for listen to this, when he pays the husband, right, for the cost of the baby, the loss of the baby, he can deduct the cost of the midwife because he lost the baby. In other words, when she was going to give birth to the baby, today you'd understand it costs a lot of money to go to the hospital, have a baby and all that, the doctor's bills and all that. That's the midwife cost. He says, well, you want to pay for the midwife anymore. So let's say the baby's worth $10,000, right? He pays for the unborn baby $10,000. But you would have paid $1,000 for the hospital, for the midwife. I'm only going to give you $9 because you saved that now. It sounds strange to us. It's like, I stole your car. I shouldn't have to pay, the full value of the car. For all, you didn't have to pay the insurance for the car now. Like that's what it sounds like. But do you go with this idea that you could deduct for that? So Rav Yossi says you deduct the cost of midwife. Ben Azai says nechim mizonos. When a woman is in labor, you have to give her more food. That was, I guess it was common they give her more food. Probably today they give less food. I don't know. They give her more food. The one who says you deduct the because the mizonos, everybody has to get mizonos. That you knock off nechim mizonos, that you deduct for the cost of the mizonos. In other words, I just avoided midwifery, right? You don't have to give her, she doesn't have to go through childbirth, so you don't have to give her more food. That certainly is a real deduction. He says the one deduction for the midwife. I don't know if the midwife. My wife, she's very smart. In other words, she knows how to give birth. There are women who give birth without a midwife, right? Sometimes it just happens. So I wouldn't have had to pay for that. Yeah, well, yeah. That Hayotena, that's right. They're like they don't need any help. Right, very good. Right. So he says, but again, even if you say that, he says, look, I saved you that money, you don't have to pay that money. So these rabbis, whether it's Ben Azai or Rav Yossi, who says, you deduct the cost of the midwife, you cost the cost of the food, they take that into consideration. Not everybody does. Obviously, these shitas are shitos yachid. Not everybody holds that way. Most people wouldn't say that way. It's like saying, I stole your car, so I saved you the money, you don't have to pay the insurance for the car. It's ridiculous, so you don't take it into consideration. Papa Rav Huna, Breda Yeshua, Now the Gemara is like sort of summarizing now that we paskin like Rav Nachman, who said that you do when an animal hurts your field, it damages your field. You don't look at the kilo of strawberries that he destroyed, that he ate. I'm talking about when he did it on purpose, not where he fell in by accident, where you only pay the value of the lunch that you would have given him, whatever fodder you would have given him. No, when the animal went in there through your negligence and he destroyed some kilo of strawberries, you don't figure the retail cost of the strawberries. You figure what they would have been worth in a field that was 60 times that, including the field, and you estimate it accordingly. So the loss is not as great as it would have been at the retail level, and that's what Papa and Rafuna Paskin very sure they did a Ma'aser Paskin like Rav Nachman, showing their law is like Rav Nachman, which it is. Some say Rav Papa Rafuna Beit Rishua Shamu Dikla Gaftina, when a man destroyed somebody else's tree. You figure it out according to not only the tree, but the land underneath it, according to the small piece of land around it. If you're talking about a inexpensive tree and you destroy the tree, you figure out the land with it, because an inexpensive tree doesn't have its own value. It's only with the land, so you pay with the land underneath. We had a mice on yesterday's daf where a man lost a tree and he went to the Exilarch and he paskined, he paskined that there are 3 trees there, they're worth $100, so you pay for each one $33, 33 and change, 33 and a third, meaning you look at the cost of the tree. And when he paskined that way, there was a man who cut on somebody else's tree. He said, you're passing to me like a Persian rule. Yes, but if it's a Persian tree, it is worth more money. If it's an expensive tree, you just figure out the cost of the tree. You don't figure out what's worth according, including the land. Rashi says the last words in Rashi on the page, and it's assessed by itself. Eliezer Zeira. Eliezer, that was his name. Eliezer, the smaller, the young, probably it's the young Eliezer. He put on some black shoes. Black was a sign of mourning. He stood in the market, and then in that market in our dog. The people of the Exilarch's house, the officers of the Exilarch's house. The Exilarch was the head of the Jewish, the let's call it the temporal head of the Jewish community in exile, like a president in exile. Not necessarily they were many times in conflict with the rabbis, right? They were more like the Rosh Memshalah. They found him. Amalei Maishna Hanim said, "What are you wearing these black shoes for?" Amalu, he told them, Amalahu, the Ma'avilna Yerushalayim. I am in mourning for Yerushalayim. Mourning Yerushalayim. Now that was considered, arrogant to walk around like somebody walked around today with a torn shirt, like he's an Avelis. He's saying, "Oh, what happened? Somebody died." I'm mourning for Yerushalayim. We consider that a little bit of arrogance to talk that way. Like, "Oh, you're such a great person. You think you're in mourning. What about the rest of us?" Amalei, you're so important, and that you could mourn for Yerushalayim more than us. They thought that this was arrogance. They took him and they imprisoned him. They incarcerated him for acting like a big shot. I'm a great man. I'm a great man. You shouldn't treat me that way. How would we know? His name is Zeira. Yeah, I call it. Yeah, I'm very modest. Look who thinks he's so modest, right? How do we know that you're so great? So ask me any question. Oh, I know, so I'll ask you a question. Whatever you want, whatever you please. You choose or I'll choose. I'll show you who's smart. Amalei, Boyat, you ask us. Amalahu, I'm on the Kotz Kufra. If a man cut down somebody else's unripe date, it's like half-grown date. What does he pay? Amalei Misham Mekuf, he pay for the value of a whole date, the value of the date, the way it is now. It's a half. You cut down a half-grown date, pay for a half-grown date. I've Tamri, but like we talked about at the beginning, Rabbi Seglili, right? And Rabbi Segli and Rabbi Shmuel, you pay according to the date it would have grown. If you would have left it on the tree another week or two, it would have been fully grown. So why should you get away with paying for a half-grown date? They said, right, Misham Tamri. So they say, okay, pay the full value of a fully grown date. Amalu Valav Tami Shakumir, but he didn't take a day. He took a half-grown day. How do you end that? Amalei Emalanat. So tell us what's the rule. Amalu B'Shishim. You figure what a field would have been worth Shishim. Again, if it's a half-grown day. Again, this is not like Rav Yoshua and Rav Shimon ben Yehuda, who said the name Rav Shimon, that you pay the full value if it's half-grown. Went like the original opinion that you look at the whole field, you pay 60 times, you pay according to value 60 times. If the whole field was whatever he ate, you figure 60 times that. And if a person would be buying a field 60 times that, how much would he deduct for what you ate? That would be a much smaller amount. Amrulay, man, who says like you, where do you get this from? Amrulu Hashmuel Chai. Shmuel is still alive. Who pays Dino Kaim and his bez and his cord is still around. Shadakam to Shmuel, they sent the question to Shmuel. Amrulu Shmuel, of course, was the chief rabbi of Nardal. Amrulu Shapir Kamalahu, and he told them, Shmuel answered, yes, he told you the right. B'shishim, you do Shetzat B'shishim B'shavku, and they let him go. They released him from jail. So just again, this idea that's confirming that that's the halacha, that you go according to Shishim. You go according to Shishim, unless it's fully grown. In other words, Rav Shimon said in the Mishnah, if it's fully grown, then even if it's still on the tree, you pay a full value, full retail value, let's say. Others said, we said Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Shmuel, and others say that you pay, even if it's half grown, you pay full value. Rav Shimon where does the Shishim come from? The amount? It's a shear that the Rabbanim figured that would be a good thing. It's not, they're not the same as Batal B'Shishim. I don't think there's as far that that's a good, that's an average way to figure out the diminished value of what you ate. How much would that diminish in a larger field the size of Shishim? The Gemara, yesterday's Gemara says, Saw B'Shishim or Taka B'Shishim or Klach B'Shishim, but the halacha is like Chizkiah, that it's Klach B'Shishim. Even a klach b'shishim, whatever you ate, you figure 60 times that on a field. And Rav Nachman confirmed that in the Paskin, like Rav Nachman, and Shmuel Paskins that way as well. Shimon Omer, if you ate completed fruits, even if they're still on the tree, you pay that amount. My time up. This is Hashem said that Hashem said that you figure out based on the field. Again, it doesn't answer your question, Michael. Where do you get the 60 from? The Rabbanan figured that Shiur. It's like a Shiur, you could say it's Halacha Moshe Misinai, but there's arguments about that, right? And of course, Shiur are usually Halacha Moshe Misinai, but some of it's Rabbanan. For example, this we say Nos and Tam. The Rabbanan said Nos and Tam is 60. That's not necessarily a Shiur like Kazayas or Kabetza. That's what we think of a Shiur. This was about Shishim, was probably Halacha Rabbanan. So if you ever say that's something that needs the field, meaning it's not fully grown. But if it's fully grown, if it's still on the tree but it's fully grown, they don't need the field anymore because they can be picked right now. You got to pay the way they are right now. So if you have fully grown strawberries or apples or whatever it is, even if they're still on the tree, you pay the full grown amount. That's what Rav Shimon says. We pass like that too. Done Rav Meir, he says like this. So Rav Meir paskin like Rav Meir, Rav paskin like Rav Meir in a certain case, even though he argues with Rav Yehuda, and usually in Machlokes Rav Yehuda Meir we go like Rav Yehuda. He's going to give us that case in a minute. That's really not related to us here now, but he said that Rav paskin the halacha like Rav Meir in the case that we're going to describe in a minute. Pasik hilchas Rav Shimon. And he passes like the halachas like Rav Shimon in our case, which we're going to see. And Tosfos passes that way too. That's the rach, that's the halacha. And we pass like Rav Shimon if it's fully grown, not if it's not fully grown. If it's not fully grown, Rabbi Shua says, yeah, you still pay the full amount. We don't necessarily pass that way. What's this halacha that Rav Paskin Don he judged the case like Rav Meir and he passed halacha like Rav Shimon done Rav Meir the Tanya. Here's the case: a man had a ksuba for his wife, right? And he said, you're going to collect the ksuba from so-and-so. I have this field, one field. You could take, that's going to be your field. That's your $200 or whatever it is, whatever the ksuba's amount of ksuba, you can collect it from this field. Then he went and he tried to sell the field to somebody else. Now, if he tried to sell the field to somebody else, she would lose it, right? But sometimes she didn't want to make a fight in the family, so she would sign it. She would say, okay, I agree. But she could claim later on when he divorces her or he dies, listen, I was just trying to be nice to my husband. I didn't want to ruin our marital, relationship. So that's a good argument. However, well, let's say he sold it, tried to sell to one guy, and she didn't confirm that. She didn't sign on that. Cost of the Rishon, he tried to sell to Reuben, let's say, below chasma, she wouldn't sign that. Below chasma. Then he tried to sell it to Shimon to somebody else, below chasma, and she signed that. That she did sign. Of the ksubasa of Rav Meir, so she lost her ksuba. Because what's her claim? Her claim is, I was just trying to be nice to him. If you're trying to be nice to him, then you would have signed the first one. Why did you not sign the first one? And you did sign the second one? The answer is you didn't mind selling it to the second one. So it's sold. And she lost the ability to collect that money from that field. She can't collect them from that field. You Omer, she could still say, Nachas Ruchas, I was just trying to be nice to my husband. What do you want from me? I was just trying to be nice to him. But Rav Meir says that's not a good argument. If you're just trying to be nice to your husband, you should have signed over the first time that he tried to sell it. The first time you said, I'm not selling it. No, I don't agree. Then the second time you do agree, that shows that you really did agree. Huh? Yeah, I mean, this buyer she liked. Right. But she was willing to give it up. Exactly. That's his argument. You didn't like the first guy. So why'd you agree to the second guy? So you like the second guy? Fine. But you didn't mind giving it up. If you really meant to keep for exhibit, you wouldn't have agreed to either one. If you agreed to the first one, then the argument you made, I was just trying to be nice to him, but I didn't really want to give it up. So then everybody would agree that she still has a claim on the property. But Rav Meir says if she didn't agree to sell to the first guy, she did agree to the second guy, too bad, she's lost it now. So there, Rav Paskin like Rav Meir. And then Hilchasik Rav Shimon, our case, if she ate, or the animal ate, completed fruits that were totally ripe, you pay for that they were ripe. Whatever it is. You just use this case of sa because before, if they weren't ripe, he said you figure it out according to what a saw is worth 60 times in that whole cheshbon. That's how I said before. But over here, if the fruits are fully ripened, even though they're still on the tree, and the animal ate them, then you certainly would pay for whatever he damaged. If the fruits were already picked and sitting in a basket, of course he'd pay. That's direct. There's no question there. The other point is that even though they're still in the tree, but if they're fully ripened, they're considered as if they're plucked already, and you'd be chayav to pay the full amount. Let's say I made a stack. I made a pile of grain or fruits, whatever, in somebody else's field. He didn't give me permission. The owner of the field ate my pile, so it's not his fault. Potter, of course, the owner of the field is Potter. You came into my field, you put your fruits or your stack in my field of wheat, grain, or whatever, and my animal ate it up. What do you want from me? You put it here. You had no permission to leave it here. And not only that, if my animal got damaged by your stuff, he slipped on him or something like that, the owner of the stack is chayav. Of course, we had that argument before. If my animal got sickened by eating it, he didn't have to eat it. But if he slipped on, he got hurt by it. If I was allowed, I allowed you to bring my stuff in there, and then it got damaged, right? Then I am responsible. So the Gemara says, Rebbe, we had before. Rebbe says, when I say you can put your stuff in my field, it doesn't mean I'm going to guard it. I just meant that you can put your stuff in my field. So why do we say that if you put your stuff in my field and my animals ate it up, that I have to pay? Why do you say it says pay? But didn't Rebbe say before that that's only if I specifically say yes, I will guard it, right? The Baal Bais is not chayav to pay unless he accepted upon himself that he's going to guard it. Here we're talking about the guard of all the barns, all the granaries in the area. As soon as he said coming in other words, it was the custom that everybody would put their piles in one person's field. So if the owner of the field said, "Okay, put it in my field," he meant to say here that put it here and I'll guard it. But normally, if you just say, "Can you put your stuff in my field?" and I say, "Put it there," yeah, you can put it there. Doesn't mean I'm going to guard it unless I said specifically I'm going to guard it. Now the pasuk says in Perek Chaf Beis in Shmos, Kisei Ish, if a fire goes out, Umatza Kotzim Nechagarish, you're chayav to pay, right? If you send out a fire, you have to pay for the damages. So Let's say I send a fire. Now we're going to talk about what does it mean by fire. Are we talking about just simply a coal, a hot coal? What are we talking about? So the Gemara is going to explain this. From the Mishnah, we can't see it. If I send the fire in the hands of a chereshet b'katan, I'm sort of responsible. God's going to hold me, but I only gave him a coal. The kid went, then he blew it, then he fanned it, then he did something with it, and he really made the fire. I'm not really directly responsible. That's a grama. And therefore, I'm potter medina on chayv din shemaim. If I send it in the hands of gave it to a normal person, if he burnt down somebody's field with the coal that I gave, obviously the person that I sent this chayv, he was the one who did it. Or let's say one person came someplace with a fire, and the fire wouldn't have caused any damage. And then a guy followed him in, brought the wood in. Maybe it's chayev. The one who bought the wood is chayev because he caused the fire. Otherwise, the fire wouldn't have done any damage. Let's say the guy with the wood was there first. Then maybe it's chayev. In other words, if the fire destroyed the wood, well, the guy if the fire destroyed the wood, if it was the person's with the fire's fault because he brought the fire afterwards, then he's chayev. Or if together they did the damage, again, person who caused it, the fire without wood wouldn't have done anything, and the wood without the fire wouldn't have done anything. So who caused it to happen? The person who came in second. Another person came and he fanned this coal. The one who fanned it is chayev because he caused the fire. If the wind caused it, then everybody's potter because nobody would have done it. We'll see what the Gemara is talking about, where it's like a rule she'ena mitzuya. All of a sudden, a tremendous wind came that couldn't have been anticipated. This is what we say that your potter, if you gave your fire to a chereshet b'katan, only if you gave him a coal, and the kid fanned it. If you gave him really a flame, literally a flame, then you're chayav. My time masav gamerlo. Your masav caused it. You gave him a flame. Now, obviously, you gave it to if you gave your flame to an irresponsible kid, and it's burning right now, you're responsible. Also put. Even if you gave him a flame, it's part of my time. Had the kid dropped the fire right there, the flame right on the sidewalk, nothing would have happened. Here it was the handling of the cheresh of the irresponsible person that you gave it to that caused it to happen. Until you give him wood, thorns, like that's going to burn, silta, the chips that are going to, like the matches, sharga, and the flame. You only chayiv actually gave him the whole fire, like you gave mamish a whole fire that's going to walk around with it. But if you gave him a flame that would have got extinguished on its own, and the kid blew it up, then it's not your fault directly. If you gave him everything, so you gave him wood with the chips and the flame all together, obviously you caused the problem. So Amisha said, if you gave it, this is really not going on Shalach B'Yad Pikeach, it's going on the part that says, if you gave, somebody else came, you gave one person, let's say, a coal, and that wouldn't have done anything. Somebody else came and fanned it, the one who fanned it is chayev. So is the word liba or niba? So either one of them, either one is correct. It says balabas eish, the flame of fire, like the fanning of fire, the movement of the fire. The one who created the movement of the lips. So whether you're talking about like the fanning of it, which is also moving it or blowing it, or movement, it's all the same. It means the same thing. Let's say you fanned it, but the wind also fanned it. If your fanning alone would have caused the fire to do the damage, you're chayev. Imla potter. Amai, why? So why don't you say that like winnowing? Why do you say if you're fanning? It says if your fanning would have done it, then enough. But if your fanning would have done it together only with the wind, you fanned it a little bit, and the wind came along and helped you along, then you're potter. Why? Why isn't it like on Shabbos? Melechas Shabbos is winnowing. How did they winnow? They took the stuff and they threw it up. They threw the grain up in the air. The wind blew apart the chaff from the good part. Why? So over there you're chayev on Shabbos. So why do you say over here, if I blew it together with the wind, I'm potter? If my blowing alone would have caused the fire, then I'm chayev. But if it was together with the wind, why isn't it like Zohar Ruach Masiyasa that you're chayev on Shabbos? 4 answers. You blew it in one direction, the wind blew it in the other direction. The wind really caused the damage because it blew it the other way. It wasn't helping you, it wasn't aiding you. You were just doing it in a way that it wouldn't have done much. It was just an irregular wind, and the wind was much stronger here. It wasn't like you did it together with the wind. Your blowing was very little, right? He said that your little wind that when you started to do it wouldn't have done anything. All of a sudden, a big wind came and that caused it. That's really the issue here. You just blew a little bit, like you're blowing on your hands. You blew a little bit, that wouldn't have caused a fire. The real fire came from the ruach. And therefore, it's not like you did it together with the ruach. The ruach was like 99%. You were 1%. Rav Ashi Amar gives a real Svardic answer. A Zohar of ruach masayasa you're chayav on Shabbos because that's melechas m'Shabbos. You wanted to do the winning. Why did you throw up in the air? Because you wanted to do the winning, and together with the wind help you. But over here, you were simply an indirect cause. The wind blew it. Right? You help the wind along a little bit. We're not measuring if it's 1% or 5% or whatever. Yours was only a grumma, and only an indirect damage. And when it comes to the zikin, that's potter. On Shabbos, that's malachas mashabbos because you had kavanah to do a proper malacha. So several answers, but the basic idea is that when it comes to if the ruach blew it, it was really the ruach that caused it, not your own blowing that caused the fire. All right, we'll pick up here tomorrow for the mission. Have a good day, everybody. Shavua tov. Shavua tov.